The curse was never stronger than love. For generations, they fought this darkness. But Tunde, the darkness lost its power. For the first time, Tunde understood. Power could build an empire, but greed destroys everything it protects. The shadow offered everything, but some gifts are chains.
Now I understand. True legacy is peace.
The night Chief Adeyemi Akinola died, his grandson heard the drums begin. But the strange thing was not the sound itself. It was where the sound came from. The drums were not coming from the village. They were not coming from the sacred Osun Grove behind the old estate. They were coming from inside the house, a house that had been abandoned for almost 30 years, a house that nobody entered after sunset, a house that carried the darkest secret of the Adeyemi family. And before the night ended, Tunde Adeyemi would discover something terrifying. His grandfather had not left him a mansion. He had left him a debt that could only be paid with his blood. Before we enter the shadows of the Osun Grove, if you enjoy African supernatural stories filled with mystery, secrets, and hidden truths, subscribe and join us for more unforgettable stories. Because some stories are not buried because they are forgotten, they are buried because someone is afraid they will be discovered. Tunde Adeyemi never wanted to return to Osogbo. For 15 years, he stayed away from the place where his family name was respected by some people and feared by others. He built a new life in Lagos, a quiet life, a normal life, a life where nobody knew about the strange stories surrounding his family. Nobody knew about the old colonial mansion sitting on the edge of the Osun forest. Nobody knew about the whispers that followed the Adeyemi bloodline. And nobody knew the truth about what happened to his father. When Tunde was 12 years old, his father, Kunle Adeyemi, walked into the forest behind their family estate. He never returned. The official story was simple. His father got lost, an unfortunate accident, a tragedy that nobody could explain. But Tunde's mother never accepted that explanation. Whenever anyone mentioned her husband, she always said the same thing. Kunle did not get lost. He was taken. As a child, Tunde believed those words came from grief. He thought his mother was a woman struggling to accept the loss of the man she loved. But as he grew older, he noticed something. Whenever the Adeyemi estate was mentioned, his mother was not sad. She was afraid. She avoided old photographs. She destroyed old letters. And whenever someone spoke about Tunde's grandfather, Chief Adeyemi Akinola, she immediately changed the subject. Tunde never understood why, until the lawyer called him. Mr. Adeyemi, the voice on the phone belonged to Barrister Femi Ajayi, the Adeyemi family's lawyer, a man who had handled their affairs for decades. I am calling regarding your grandfather's estate. Tunde looked at the papers on his desk. Another busy day. Another problem waiting to be solved. My grandfather died months ago. Why are you calling me now? There was a pause. A long pause. The kind of silence that suggested someone was afraid to say the wrong thing. Your grandfather left specific instructions. What instructions? He wanted the property to go to you. Tunde laughed quietly, not because it was funny, because it was impossible. My grandfather hated me. The lawyer said nothing, and that silence disturbed Tunde more than any answer. Mr. Ajayi, your grandfather changed before his death. What does that mean? He spent his final years waiting for someone. Who? Another pause. Then the lawyer answered, you. 3 days later, Tunde stood in front of the Adeyemi estate and immediately understood why people avoided it. The mansion looked like a forgotten piece of history. It had been built during the colonial era, a symbol of wealth and influence. Tall white pillars, large wooden windows, a grand entrance door carved with symbols nobody in the family explained. But years of abandonment had changed it. The paint had faded. The garden had become wild. The walls carried the scars of decades of rain and neglect. And behind the estate stood the Osun Grove, ancient, silent, watching. The locals had many names for that forest. Some called it sacred. Some called it dangerous. Some simply refused to talk about it. Children were warned never to enter. Hunters avoided it. Farmers planted far away from its borders. But Tunde had never believed those stories. Not until he saw the old woman standing beside the old gate. She wore a white traditional outfit. Her hair was covered with a faded cloth. Her face showed signs of age, but her eyes were different, sharp, focused, almost as if she had been waiting for him. "You came back." Tunde stopped. "Do I know you?" The woman smiled sadly. "No." Then she looked toward the mansion. "But your family knows me." Tunde studied her. "Who are you?" The woman ignored the question. Instead, she placed her hand on the old iron gate. "You should leave before the 7th night." Tunde frowned. "What happens on the 7th night?" The woman looked directly into his eyes. "The house remembers its owner." A cold wind passed through the trees. For a moment, Tunde heard something. A whisper. A voice coming from the forest, calling his name. "Tunde." He turned quickly. Nobody was there. When he looked back, the woman was gone. Inside the mansion, Tunde felt something unusual. The house did not feel abandoned. It felt awake. There is a difference between a place that has been forgotten and a place that is waiting. The furniture was covered with old sheets. The floors were covered in dust. The air smelled like old wood and memories. But one room caught Tunde's attention. His grandfather's study. The door was locked. Barrister Jay had given him the keys before leaving. "You may find answers there," the lawyer had said. At the time, Tunde thought he meant family documents. He was wrong. The study was exactly how his grandfather left it. A large wooden desk, old books, dust-covered shelves, and behind the desk, a portrait of Chief Adeyemi Akinola, a powerful man, a respected man, a feared man. But there was something strange about the painting. His grandfather was not looking at the person viewing it. He was looking toward the forest, as if he was waiting for something. Tunde searched through the drawers, property documents, old newspapers, letters. Then he found something hidden, a small wooden box beneath the desk. Inside the box was a photograph. Tunde picked it up, and his entire body became cold. The photograph showed his grandfather standing beside a woman dressed completely in white. Behind them was the Osun Grove. But that was not what frightened him. The woman in the picture was the same woman he had just seen outside the gate. The photograph was dated 1968. Tunde searched through the box again. Then he found a letter. The handwriting belonged to his grandfather. The message was short. "To the child who carries my blood. If you are reading this, then I have failed. Do not believe those who call me a monster, and do not believe those who call me innocent. The truth is somewhere between both sides." Tunde continued reading. Then he reached the final words. "The forest does not want your death. It wants what I promised." That night, Tunde could not sleep. At exactly 12 minutes past midnight, the drums began. Slow, deep, powerful. Boom, boom, boom. They sounded like they were coming from underneath the mansion. Tunde grabbed a flashlight. Every instinct told him to leave, but another feeling pushed him forward, the need to know the truth. He followed the sound downstairs, past the dining room, past the abandoned kitchen, until he reached a door he had never seen before. A basement door. a basement that did not exist on the property records. The door slowly opened, and inside was a hidden chamber. The walls were covered with ancient markings. Family names, dates, symbols. And in the center of the room was a wooden shrine, covered with fresh flowers. Flowers that only grew deep inside the Osun Grove. Then Tunde heard footsteps behind him, slow footsteps. Someone was standing in the darkness. He turned and saw the woman in white, the same woman from the photograph, the same woman from the gate. She looked at him with sadness, not anger, not hatred, sadness. Then she spoke. The son has finally returned. Tunde stepped backward. Who are you? The woman looked toward the shrine, then back at him. I am the reason your grandfather became rich. The drum stopped. The room became silent. Then she whispered, and I am the reason your father never came home. Shadows of the Osun Grove, Part 2. The Woman in White. Tunde stood frozen inside the hidden chamber. For several moments, his mind refused to understand what he was seeing. The woman standing before him looked like she belonged to another world. Her white clothing was old. Her presence was unsettling. But the most frightening thing was not her appearance. It was the certainty in her voice. She spoke like someone who had been waiting for him, not for days, not for months, for years. What did you say about my father? Tunde finally asked. His voice was low, almost afraid of the answer. The woman looked toward the wooden shrine in the center of the room. Her fingers gently touched the carved surface. My name is Adisawa. Tunde stared at her. I have never heard that name. You are not supposed to. She looked around the hidden chamber. Your grandfather removed my name from your family's story. Why would he do that? Adisawa looked at him. Because powerful people often hide the things that give them power. A cold wind moved through the room. The flames beside the shrine flickered. Tunde noticed something strange. The woman did not seem surprised by anything. Not the house, not the hidden chamber, not him. As if this moment had already happened in her mind many times. Are you human? Tunde asked. The woman smiled sadly. You are asking the wrong question. She stepped closer. The question you should ask is, was your family still human after they made their promise? The next morning, Tunde woke up inside his grandfather's study. For a moment, he wondered if everything was a dream. The basement, the hidden chamber, the woman, the conversation, all of it. But then he saw something sitting on the desk. A small white flower, fresh, covered in water droplets even though there had been no rain. Tunde picked it up. His hands became cold because he recognized it. It was the same flower his mother used to place beside his father's photograph every year. A flower that only grew inside the Osun Grove. Tunde immediately called his mother. She answered after several rings. Tunde? Her voice changed the moment she heard him. Where are you? You know where I am. Silence. A painful silence. Leave that house. Tunde looked toward the window. The forest stood in the distance, watching. Why? Just leave. No. His mother's breathing became heavier. Tunde. He had heard many emotions in his mother's voice before. Anger, sadness, disappointment, but never fear. What happened in that house? Her mother said nothing, then quietly whispered, Your grandfather was not the man you think he was.
Tunde looked at the old portrait hanging on the wall. I already know that. No, her voice became softer. You don't. For the first time in years, his mother told him the story she had hidden. A story about a young chief Adeyemi Akinona. Before the wealth, before the businesses, before the respect, there was a time when his grandfather had nothing. No influence, no power, no future. People laughed at him. They believed he would never become important. Then one day, he walked into the Osun Grove, and when he returned, everything changed. Within years, he became one of the richest men in the region. People called it success. They called it intelligence. They called it destiny. But Tunde's mother knew there was another explanation. Your grandfather made a promise. Tunde looked toward the forest. To who? His mother paused, then answered, to something that lived there. Tunde wanted to reject the idea. He wanted to laugh. He wanted to believe there was a logical explanation. But every answer created more questions. The basement, the hidden chamber, the woman in white, the drums, everything pointed toward one truth. Something had been hidden from him, and his family had spent generations protecting the secret. That afternoon, Barrister Femi Ajayi arrived at the estate. The moment he stepped inside, Tunde noticed something. The lawyer was nervous, not uncomfortable, afraid. You knew. Barrister Ajayi looked confused. What did you know? The basement. The older man's face changed, only for a second, but Tunde noticed. You knew there was something hidden beneath this house. The older man slowly removed his glasses. I hoped you would never find it. Why? Because some truths are heavier than lies. Tunde stepped closer. You are my grandfather's lawyer. Yes, you helped him hide this. Barrister Ajayi looked away. I helped protect the family. From what? The lawyer looked toward the forest. From what lives there. Tunde shook his head. You actually believe those stories? The lawyer gave a sad smile. I watched your grandfather enter that forest as a young man. I watched him return 3 days later. And after that day, everything changed. What changed? Everything. The money, the influence, the respect, all of it. But so did the suffering. Tunde looked carefully at him. What do you mean? Barrister Ajayi sat down. My father worked for Chief Adeyemi. He was there when the first signs appeared. What signs? People around your grandfather began to disappear. His closest friends, his business partners, even members of his own family. Tunde's expression changed. My father? The lawyer looked at him. Your father discovered the truth. The lawyer revealed something shocking. His family had not been protecting the estate. They had been protecting the agreement. The agreement? Tunde repeated. Barrister Ajayi nodded. Your grandfather made a promise that had consequences. Every generation after him carried the burden. Tunde stared at him. What burden? The lawyer looked down. Payment. That night, Tunde returned to his grandfather's study. He searched through everything, every document, every hidden drawer, every old box, until he found something. A diary. The personal diary of Chief Adeyemi Akinola. At first, the pages were normal. Business plans, family notes, political meetings. Then the writing changed. The words became desperate, fearful. One page caught Tunde's attention. I believed wealth would bring peace. I was wrong. Another page. The forest gave me what I wanted, but it never gave me what I needed. Tunde turned the page. His heart started beating faster. I thought I could escape the agreement. I thought I could sacrifice something else. But the forest always collects what belongs to it. Then he found the final entry, the one that changed everything. The payment cannot be avoided. The bloodline must continue. The first son must carry what I created. Tunde dropped the diary. His grandfather had not promised his own life. He had promised his son's, his father's. Suddenly, the lights went out. The mansion became completely dark. Then the drums began again. Boom, boom, boom. But this time around, they were louder, closer. Tunde stood still. A sound came from the hallway. Footsteps. Someone walking slowly toward him. He lifted the flashlight. A figure stood at the end of the corridor. A man. An older man, wearing the same clothes his father wore the night he disappeared. Tunde froze. Dad? The figure stepped forward, but before his face became visible, the voice came. Do not trust the woman in white. Tunde froze. Then the light returned. The hallway was empty. Nobody was there. Only one thing remained. Wet footprints on the floor, leading towards the forest. Tunde stared at the footprints. His mind was racing. The woman in white said she was connected to his father's disappearance. Now his father's spirit appeared to warn him against her. Someone was lying. Someone was hiding the truth. And Tunde realized something terrifying. The greatest danger was not knowing who to believe. It was knowing that everyone might be telling only part of the truth. The next morning, Tunde made a decision. He would enter the Osun Grove. He would find the answers himself. He would discover what happened to his father, and he would finally learn what his grandfather promised. But he did not know that someone had been waiting for him inside the forest. Someone who knew the entire story. Someone who had protected the secret for decades. And someone who would do anything to make sure the agreement was fulfilled. Shadows of the Osun Grove, Part 3. The Truth Beneath the Trees. The Osun Grove had a strange silence, a silence that did not feel empty. It felt aware. As Tunde walked deeper into the forest, he felt as though every step was being watched. The trees stood tall around him. Their branches moved gently above his head, but there was almost no wind, no birds singing, no insects making noise, only silence. And beneath that silence, a rhythm, the same rhythm he had heard inside the mansion, the drums, slow, deep, ancient, boom, boom, boom. Tunde followed the trail of footprints he had found outside the estate. The footprints appeared impossible. They crossed dry ground, they passed through thick bushes, and they continued deeper into a part of the forest where even experienced hunters refused to go. After almost an hour of walking, Tunde reached a clearing. In the center stood an enormous tree. Its roots spread across the ground like the fingers of a giant hand. The tree looked older than the village itself, older than the estate, older than his family's name. Beneath the tree was a small box. Tunde approached carefully. Inside the box was a photograph. The moment he saw it, his heart stopped. It was his father, Tunde Adeyemi. But he was not alone. Standing beside him was Adisawa, the woman in white, and standing behind them was Chief Adeyemi Akinola, his grandfather. All three of them were together. Tunde turned the photograph over. There was a date written behind it, 1999, the year his father disappeared. But the family story said his father entered the forest alone. The family story said nobody knew what happened. The family story was a lie. Again. A voice suddenly came from behind him. You were not supposed to find that. Tunde quickly turned around. Standing there was Baba Kunle, the village elder, the same man who had warned people for decades about entering the grove. You knew. The old man looked tired. I knew many things. You knew my father came here. Yes. And you never told anyone? The elder looked towards the ancient trees. Some truths are hidden because they protect people. Tunde shook his head. No. Some truths are hidden because people are afraid. The elder looked at him. Sometimes both things are true. Baba Kunle walked towards the tree. Your family misunderstood this forest. Tunde looked confused. What do you mean? Your grandfather believed the grove gave him power. But the grove never gave him power. It only revealed a path. Tunde looked at the photograph. Then why did he become rich? Because he was given an opportunity. But instead of being grateful, he refused to accept. He wanted control. The elder explained the truth. The Osun Grove was not a place where people came to make wishes. It was not a place where spirits simply handed people wealth. It was a place of balance, a place where humans and nature existed together. But Chief Adeyemi wanted more. He wanted influence, respect, fear. He wanted a name that nobody could challenge. And when he discovered something beyond human understanding, he tried to control it. Your grandfather made a mistake. Tunde looked at him. What mistake? He thought the gift belonged to him. The elder's voice became serious. But everything in this world has a price. The problem was not that he paid. The problem was that he refused to accept. Tunde looked towards the forest. What was the cost? The elder became silent, then answered, Your family. Tunde felt a chill. What? Your grandfather's actions created an imbalance. The consequences followed his bloodline. The people he loved suffered. The people who tried to escape suffered. The people who discovered the truth suffered. Tunde thought about his father. Why? Baba Kunle looked at him. Because your grandfather created something worse than a curse. What?
A living consequence. The elder explained that Chief Adeyemi had separated the darkest parts of himself from his own soul. His greed, his anger, his hunger for power. He believed removing those emotions would make him stronger. But he was wrong. Those parts did not disappear. They became something else, something alive, something that existed between the human world and the spirit world, something the family called the shadow. Tunde looked toward the mansion in the distance. So, the thing haunting my family is not the forest. Baba Kunle shook his head. No, it is your grandfather's darkness. Suddenly the trees began moving, not from wind. Something was moving between them. Baba Kunle stepped back. We need to leave. But Tunde did not move. Where is my father? The elder closed his eyes. I hoped you would never ask. Tunde stepped forward. Tell me. Baba Kunle looked at him. Your father discovered the truth before you. He found out what your grandfather created, and he tried to stop it. How? The elder looked toward the ancient tree. He trapped himself between worlds. Tunde stared at him. My father sacrificed himself? No. Baba Kunle shook his head. No. He protected you. He chose to remain trapped because he knew if he returned, the shadow would follow him. A voice suddenly came from the trees. Tunde? He turned. Adisawa stood among the shadows. But she looked different. She looked tired, not frightening, like someone carrying a burden for many years. You finally know. Tunde looked at her. You lied to me. Adisawa lowered her eyes. I protected you. You told me you were the reason my father never came home. I was. Tunde froze. She stepped closer. Because I helped him disappear. The forest became silent. Why? Tunde asked.
Adisawa looked toward the mansion. Because your father discovered that the real danger was never the agreement. Then what was it? She looked at him, the person who wanted the agreement to continue. Tunde's heart raced. Who? Adisawa whispered. Your grandfather. That night, Tunde returned to the estate. But the house had changed. The mansion no longer felt abandoned. Every candle was burning. Every door was open. The old walls seemed alive. And inside the living room, someone was waiting. An old man sat in a chair, facing away from him. Tunde stopped. Slowly, the man turned around, and Tunde saw the face he knew only from photographs. Chief Adeyemi Akinola, his grandfather, the man who had died months ago, the man who should have been buried alive. Tunde could barely speak. How? His grandfather smiled. Because some promises are stronger than death. Tunde stepped backward. You are dead. His grandfather smiled. Death is only permanent for those who have nothing left. Chief Adeyemi stood. You came home. Tunde looked at him. You knew I would come. I knew your blood would bring you here. What do you want from me? His grandfather walked closer. I want you to understand. I did not destroy this family. I built it. The wealth, the influence, the respect, everything you have came from my choices. Tunde looked at him with anger. You destroyed everyone. Chief Adeyemi shook his head. No. I gave everyone a chance to become powerful, a chance to become remembered. But they were too weak. The room became colder. Then his grandfather revealed the truth. The agreement was never waiting for Tunde's blood. It was waiting for his decision. His grandfather had spent decades searching for someone strong enough to continue what he started. Someone who would accept the power. Someone who would become the next guardian of the family's secret. Someone who would continue the legacy. And now, that person was standing before him. The drum started again. Boom, boom, boom. But this time, the sound was different. It was coming from inside the house, inside the walls, inside Tunde himself. A strange mark appeared on his hand, the same symbol carved in the hidden chamber. Chief Adeyemi smiled. The forest has chosen. Tunde looked at the mark and finally understood. The question was never whether the curse would find him. The question was whether he would become the next person to carry it, or whether he would be the first person brave enough to end it. Shadows of the Osun Grove, Part 4. The Last Promise. The mark on Tunde's hand burned, but the pain was not the worst part. The worst part was what came with it. Memories, images, moments that did not belong to him. He saw a young man walking through the forest, a man carrying fear in his eyes, a man trying to find answers, a man trying to protect the people he loved. His father, Tunde Adeyemi. The memory pulled Tunde back 15 years. To the night everything changed. His father had discovered his grandfather's hidden journals. At first, Tunde believed they were simply the writings of a successful businessman, a record of how a poor man became powerful. But as he read deeper, he discovered something terrifying. The businesses, the wealth, the influence, the family name, everything was connected to the promise made inside the Osun Grove. His father had not built an empire. He had built a chain that trapped every generation after him. Tunde searched for a way to break it. He refused to continue the agreement. And that was when the strange events began. People around him became sick, his business collapsed, accidents followed the family. The more he tried to escape, the stronger the darkness became. But Tunde discovered something important. The force attacking his family was not the forest. It was something his father had created, something that wanted the agreement to continue forever. Tunde returned to the present. He looked at the old man standing before him. "You are not my grandfather." Chief Adeyemi smiled. "Is that what they told you?" Tunde stepped back. "You are the shadow." The old man's expression changed, only slightly, but enough. Such a simple name for something you do not understand. Suddenly, another voice filled the room. "Do not listen to him." Tunde turned. Adisawa stood at the entrance. The old man looked angry. "You have stayed away." Adisawa looked at him. "You have controlled this family for too long." Tunde looked between them. "Someone tell me the truth." For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Adisawa finally said, "Your grandfather is not alive." Tunde looked at the old man. "Then what is he?" Adisawa answered quietly, "The part of him that refused to disappear." The room became colder. The candles flickered. The old man smiled. "I am the part that made him successful. I am the ambition, the determination, the hunger, the strength." Adisawa looked at Tunde, but he forgot one thing. What? Every human being has darkness, but darkness was never meant to rule. The mansion suddenly shook. The walls cracked. The floor moved. Roots pushed through the wooden boards. The house was changing. The estate built by Chief Adeyemi was slowly becoming part of the forest. Adisawa looked worried. He is becoming stronger. Tunde looked at her. "How do we stop him?" She looked at the mark on his hand. The agreement. Tunde frowned. "What about it?" "It needs a choice." The shadow laughed. "You still do not understand." He walked toward Tunde. "You think this is about good and evil. No, this is about survival. Your family was nothing before me. I gave them everything. I gave them a name." Tunde stared at him. "And you took everything from them." The shadow's face became darker. "You are young. You still believe suffering makes people better. But the world respects power. People remember winners. Nobody remembers the weak." Then another figure appeared. A man standing near the staircase. Tunde froze. "Dad?" Tunde Adeyemi looked at his son. Older, tired, but peaceful. Tunde slowly walked toward him. "Is it really you?" His father smiled. "Not the way you hoped." Tunde's eyes filled with emotion. "Why didn't you come back?" Kule looked down. "Because I could not. I tried. I fought. But every time I got close, the shadow followed." Tunde looked at him. "You stayed away because of me." His father nodded. "I stayed away because I loved you." Those words broke something inside Tunde. For years, he believed his father abandoned him. He believed he was forgotten. But the truth was different. His father had been protecting him all along. Chief Adeyemi laughed. "A beautiful moment, but emotions will not save you." He looked at Tunde. "You have a choice. Accept the power. Accept the family legacy. Take what belongs to you. You can have wealth, respect, influence, everything your father rejected." Tunde looked around the room. The mansion, the forest, the people who had suffered. His grandfather, his father, Adisawa. And he finally understood. The greatest temptation was not money. It was the desire to fix the past, to become powerful enough that nobody could hurt you again. But power built from pain only creates more pain. Tunde looked at the shadow. "My family spent generations trying to become powerful, and all it gave them was fear. He looked at the mark on his hand. I choose something else. The shadow smiled. You choose weakness. Tunde shook his head. No, I choose freedom. The drum stopped completely. The forest became silent. Then the mark on Tunde's hand began to fade. The shadow stepped backward. For the first time, he looked afraid. No! The walls shook. The roots pulled away. The darkness around the mansion began to disappear because the agreement had lost the one thing it needed, a willing successor. The shadow screamed, a sound that was neither human nor animal. The entire estate shook. The windows shattered. The old portraits fell. The memories trapped inside the mansion began to disappear. Chief Adeyemi's face changed. For a moment, Tunde saw the real man beneath the darkness. A frightened old man. A man who had spent his entire life running from the consequences of his own choices. Adisawa stepped forward. The promise is finished. The shadow looked at her. You think this ends anything? She answered calmly. No, it begins. The darkness disappeared. The mansion became still. The forest became quiet. And Tunde collapsed. When he opened his eyes, he was outside the estate. Morning sunlight touched his face. For the first time since arriving in Osogbo, the forest felt peaceful. Beside him sat Adisawa. But she looked different. The fear was gone. The sadness was gone. She looked free. You did what nobody in your family could do. Tunde looked toward the mansion. What happens now? She smiled.
Now the forest rests. The villagers arrived later that morning. They found Tunde near the old estate. They found no hidden chamber, no shrine, no explanation for what happened. Only the mansion remained. But something had changed. The house no longer felt cursed. It felt empty, like a place finally released from a long burden. Months later, Tunde made a decision. He did not sell the estate. Instead, he restored it, but not as a symbol of wealth, not as a monument to his grandfather. He turned it into a place where people could learn, a place where history was remembered, a place where the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. Years passed, the stories continued. Some people said the Osun Grove was magical. Some said it was dangerous. Some said a young man ended an ancient curse. But whenever people asked Tunde what really happened, he always gave the same answer. The forest was never the enemy. The enemy was the darkness people allowed to grow inside themselves. One evening, many years later, Tunde stood at the edge of the grove. The sun was setting. The trees moved gently. The water flowed peacefully. Then he heard something. A drum, soft, slow, peaceful. Not a warning, a reminder. And Tunde smiled because he finally understood. The forest was never waiting for someone to defeat it. It was waiting for someone to listen. Some stories are about monsters hiding in dark places, but the deeper stories are about the monsters people create inside their own hearts. Because greed can look like ambition. Power can look like success. And sometimes the greatest victory is not gaining everything you want. It is having the courage to let go of what is destroying you. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the Elite African Storytellers for more supernatural African dramas, mysteries, and unforgettable legends. Because every shadow has a story,
and every story has a truth waiting to be discovered. This was Shadows of the Osun Grove.